And we can just dance the night away until we get no more. Shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you used to be. For just tonight, could you just dance the night away?
Alright, this is part 1 of Reddit reads over Guild Wars 2 content that I had lost audio on. This is going to be one of the there should be 3 videos left that are going to be had. This is part 1 of those videos. They will be posted today. For me, it's Sunday. For you guys, it'll be Monday. If we do end up doing more Reddit reads, depending on the reactions, they'll be over web fishing because it's a lot easier to just kind of listen or watch. It's not as much action and activity going on and whatnot. And Guild Wars 2 will be going back after this. You'll start hearing normal conversations and in-game stuff and whatnot. And then we're getting back to the normal routine. So we're doing r/relationship advice, and this is going to be story number 1. Give me a moment. Come on. There we go.
How can I, 38F, make my fiancé, 41M, understand that paying his life expenses is burning me out? We've been together 4 years. He's always struggled financially, and I have not. I've worked my ass off to be financially stable, and it's important to me that I stay that way. I encouraged him to find a stable job, and he did, and was getting ahead financially. After more than a year of his financial stability, we decided to move in together, and he proposed. Shortly after the proposal, he unexpectedly quit his job. I know he was burned out and the work environment wasn't great, but it was a steady income. It was a big shock to say the least, but I tried to be supportive since I knew he was stressed to the max, and that's what partners do. He told me he would find at least a side gig in the next few months while he worked on building his own business. That allayed my stress for the time being. It's been 5 months now and he still hasn't found anything to bring in income, but he is working on building a business. The business is not likely to bring in any income for at least several more months, and I'm not sure if it will at all because I haven't seen any progress. I do try to ask him about it, but he's still in the building phase and hasn't tried to find clients who will need the work he provides yet since he isn't ready. I think it's a good business idea, but I worry about the actual execution. Meanwhile, he has debts he is responsible for and has burned through his money. I have lent him some, and the payback date has come and went. He asked me to help cover his car payment and gas since he uses the car to help care for my kids. I told him I was uncomfortable with that, and it turned into a multi-day argument. He's now asked me to cover his debts while he works on his business and frames it as me investing in him because we are building a partnership together. I get that, but the ask feels indefinite to me, and when I try to put an end date to it, conversations turn vague and I'm left feeling like I don't believe in him and I'm unwilling to support him. Maybe I am unwilling to support him this way financially, and that's why I'm feeling so burned out. I want to be a supportive partner, but I feel like I'm possibly being taken advantage of. I can also see the side where, sometimes things are tough and partners have to support each other, sickness, health, rich, poor. You know? I'm having a hard time because he is able-bodied and capable of bringing in income. I haven't seen any urgency or work toward at least doing something interim while he tries to build up his company, and that's what I need to see. When I bring this up, he always says he's working on something for his business for a couple weeks until he can get to the next step, kind of like he doesn't have time for a side job. I guess I feel like having money to pay current expenses is more important immediately, and he should work on building his business on the side of that, rather than the other way around. I'm able to pay all of the expenses, but it's making me feel financially claustrophobic, if that makes sense. I have goals that I have to sideline since I have his extra expenses at the moment. When I tell him I'm at capacity and I can't cover his expenses, I somehow end up feeling like I'm unsupportive and don't believe in him, which isn't the case. I just want him to cover his own life. He tells me everything is always mine or his, and we need to think of everything together. What's the line between being supportive and being taken advantage of? What's the line between able to bring in income and willing to bring in income? I feel like he sees my income as sufficient for our life, so we're fine, but honestly I'm overworked and overwhelmed and would like to have some breathing room where I could take a small step back at work. When I talk about this, he says he will just work until he's 90 then. It feels very unproductive.
Okay. See, this right here, your husband needs to actually pull himself up by the britches. Do not give him any more money. Here's why. My own family, my own sisters, and my mother and I, we have borrowed money from each other back and forth. They've borrowed from me, I've borrowed from them, etc., etc. But you know what the difference is? We have always paid each other back in full. In full. And if my sister says, oh, hey, I don't have enough, I'm only going to give you half of what I was going to give you this week, but I'll give it to you next week, as long as she upholds that, and which she has every time, then that is how it is, right? Because here's the thing, right? Family is important, but your word matters too, right? Because people don't realize, like, oh, well, we're family. You're my partner. You should be supportive of me. No, your word needs to be worth it, okay? Love is not enough in the real world. That's not how this works. When you make a promise or you say something or he needs to put his foot to the metal. If it's a good idea, then he needs to run with it. And this whole idea of, it's our, we're equal partners in this business. No, you're not. You're his sugar mama right now, and he's your sugar baby, and he is feeding into it. And honestly, you're not getting much back out of it. And here's the thing. To play devil's advocate a little bit, it is hard to get a startup on a business depending on the type of business he's going into. If it's something like a crafts business, that's not hard to do. There's lots of people who do that. They do it through Etsy, they do it through DeviantArt, depending on the type of art it is, or they do it through like Facebook. But if he's doing like a construction business or something, then yeah, word of mouth has to spread. You have to get credentials and stuff for that. But honestly, and it's hard. There's some people who know exactly what they're doing. They have a good business plan, but they can't fork the money up. And business fails. But here's the thing. It shouldn't drag your family down. The whole line about in the wedding vows of through sickness, through health, through richer or poor, right? That line isn't saying if your husband tanks your guys' whole family and drags you guys down to poverty level, to barely passing to feed his pipe dream. That's not what that's about. That's saying if something bad were to happen that wasn't the fault of you or your other partner, then we would be in it together. Because you're not supposed to drag your partner down. Your partner's supposed to be your partner that you're working with. Don't get me wrong, things happen sometimes. Sometimes you get fired. Sometimes your business that you're working at goes down and you're out of work for a bit. It happens. But that's the richer or poor thing, right? If you're working at a 9-to-5 job and suddenly the business tanks, they find some bad things have been going on. Business just lost too much money. Bosses couldn't hold out anymore. They sold it, whatever. And then you don't have a job anymore. That's not your fault. That's the richer or poorer clause instead of a marriage thing. That's hard times. You making hard times for yourself isn't hard times, right? He knew what he was doing. He had a plan, right? He needs to stick to it. And honestly, the fact that it's been 5 months and he hasn't made any attempt to do something, I don't know his excuses. A good example is this, right? I'm working from home myself. I don't make a whole lot right now myself through streaming and YouTubing, but I have worked in the past. I have, credentials, so I could go and get a job if I need to. My fiance wants me to give this a fair shot. He wants me to devote my time to it. And guess what I do? I spend 7 to 8 hours a day. I even work on I work a few hours on the weekends too to finish some editing and to make the stream look good and change out games and whatnot, right? I put the footwork in because even if I'm not making anything right now, if I'm putting footwork in, and it is progressing, I am seeing like progressions. I'm seeing there are followers on Twitch. I'm seeing that there are people on YouTube that are interested, and like I'm not obviously famous, and I probably never will be, but my efforts are making fruits and labors. And my fiance is with me my husband now. I shouldn't call him fiance anymore. He's my husband now. My husband's with me all the way. If my husband one day would come up to me and say, hey, you need to go get a job because this isn't working, I'm going to do that. Like, as much as I like this is an ideal thing for me, and I like the thought of being able to do entertaining things. 'Cause I love entertaining people. I love making jokes. I love talking. And I love just being a goofball, right? But if it becomes a point where it's too much for him to do with and he wants me to do it, I'm going to do it because I'm his partner, not his baby. I am not here to drag him down with all my nonsense, right? That's not how this works. That's not what loving partners do. And like I said, it's okay to put a hard line. Just tell him, I'm not giving you any more money. My kids need money. Whether it hits his kids or not, honestly, since you're married, to me, he's equal responsible for those kids as you are. unless divorce happens and stuff. But I would say, look, I'd be like, look, I have kids to feed. We have kids to feed. We have a house to pay. We have mortgages to pay. And here's the other thing, too. If you're going to open a business, it is oftentimes more practical to have a side job, even if it's a part-time job, to fund it than you did. For instance, when I started trying to, I'd been streaming and doing for several years now, 4 or 5 years now. But I didn't take it, I wasn't able to take serious time because most of the time I was working a full-time job. I was working in retail. Not that that's a major thing or anything special, but I was working and trying to do stuff. And I just couldn't focus a lot on streaming and Twitch and everything because of the fact that I was just too tired. And it just happens, right? But I had money, I had income, and I was covering my thing. And when I came to move here with him, I intentionally saved up months of whatever I could spare so that I had pocket money so that I wasn't feeding off of him. And he's been trying to keep that pocket money full since I came here. Not that I've asked him to do that, but he's done that, and I'm grateful for it. But my goal is to hopefully be self-sufficient one day and be able to keep my own account going so that it's not affecting him as much. But as I said, this is a conversation we've had, and it's been equally agreed upon. We've argued the pros and cons, and this is an agreement we are on board with. And if in this situation, you don't sound like you're on board with it. So that's not part of a friendship or relationship or anything. And I know you're his partner and all, but this is not a relationship you want to be in. And you guys are just fiancés and husbands right now. You know, fiancé right now. You're not married. And you're giving him all this money. I would not do this until you, like, this is quite a bit. I would stop giving him money. Say, hey, look, I love you, but I have kids to feed. I have bills to pay. I have mortgages to pay. I have savings to keep up. What happens if an emergency happens? I've given you so much money, like, you need to try and push the business. I haven't seen any efforts. And if he doesn't like that, you could also bring up the fact that if you were a business and there were, say, what do they call them? Timeshares of your business, you know, or stocks in your business, depending. If you don't show progressions on your business, or your business doesn't show numbers, doesn't show income coming in, stock shares or stocks would go low, like timeshares would be like being pulled, things like that. I can't remember exactly what the timeshares specifically does in finances. I just know it's important. It's the bloodline to it in most bigger businesses. But the point is, if you do not have income and your business is not flourishing or growing even slightly, a lot of people would pull their funding from you. That's the reality of the world. If you have people funding your business, strangers, family members, doesn't matter. If you're not pulling an income, or you're not making at least breaking even, you're not going to stay in business, period. I just think you need to put your foot down and say, look, sweetie, I love you. I think your dream's great, but you need to put some more footwork in. And I've funded enough of this. We're going to read some comments real quick because I want to see what other people have to say. But and like I said, you haven't said through sickness or through health yet. You haven't made this commitment, and you are being supportive. You've given him enough support. You've given him some money. You have told him his idea is great. You've had discussions about it. But I would tell him that he hasn't made it official. This is like, it doesn't seem like it's even made out the front door kind of thing. But see what other people said. Complete Plant 4189 says, this will be your life. It wasn't a coincidence that he quit after he snagged you. It was planned. Thank goodness you see who he is before you wed and get pregnant. You would be much more financially responsible for his future than you are now. See, this is the thing, too. If he quit right when you guys got married, and obviously you didn't really like this, it wasn't discussed, that is something that's also a red flag. I didn't quit my job or put my 2 weeks notice in at my job without his consent. And we had to have several conversations about it where he's like, you should just do it. Or maybe you should. We argued both sides. We played devil's advocate to our own arguments because we wanted this to be the best decision we could make at the time, knowing what it needed, you know? And that's the thing. And we weren't married at the time. We were still engaged at the time when we had this conversation. And that's the difference. It has to be a conversation. You cannot quit your job on a dime when you are married. It's just not how that works. And the reason is because when you quit your job on a dime, you are showing a discourtesy to your partner of saying, oh, I don't really care about the financial security that comes with being your partner. Because it's as important as wearing a seatbelt, because people think that, oh, money should not be part of a marriage. It is. It's part of a marriage, right? That doesn't mean that you don't need to like be like obsessed with it, but you need to have enough blood money to be, or a lot of enough money to keep the blood going in the family. Because who's gonna buy groceries with if you don't have money? What's gonna pay the bills if you don't have money? You don't have to be obsessed with it, but you have to be able to keep that limit of, we need this amount, right? The balance. That's what I'm trying to get at. The balancing act between being too obsessed with money and not being obsessed enough. In this situation, he needs to be more obsessed with his own income and not yours, because he thinks he can, leech off you. And leeching off somebody isn't very useful to a partnership, especially if there's kids involved, especially if you have kids or if you want kids. In this situation, I think she said she had kids, but at the very least, even if she wants to plan for kids, like maybe with him, this is not going to work. You cannot be dating a partner who is so selfish enough to essentially have you support them without your consent on the matter. And on top of that, the other thing to it is, not only is it bad because of the fact that it causes financial strain, your kids are going to look at that and be like, wow, so if I'm a guy, I could marry a girl and just quit and just have her take care of me. That's not how the world works. You need to be equal partners. Everybody needs to be making some kind of effort. Even if you're a homestead person, you stay at home as a partner, you need to be doing something at home, right? Cooking, cleaning, vacuuming, doing laundry, taking the dogs out for a walk, etc., 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 right? Equal contribution to it. Otherwise, she doesn't need you. She could just go and do all these things by herself. She doesn't need you to weigh her down. So, yeah, I do think it's a little bit of a red flag, especially if it would quit without, like, really bringing it up to you. And if he did, the fact that he's quit and you guys had this plan and he hasn't made any moves in the last 5 months, that's pretty bad. Because the only time you start quitting your job is when you've actually got a stable ground. Heck, there's people who own a business now that are successful who didn't quit their original day jobs until they made enough money from their business that they no longer had to work. And even then, they still worked at their own business because it was cheaper to pay one less employee because they work there. They don't have to pay themselves. I even had a customer who owned his own business, and he said for a long time it was just him and like 3 other employees. And the employees asked him, oh, well, boss, you don't have to be here. You don't have to be here. We can take care of it. And he's like, they could. But on busy days, I would pop on a register and I would run things and I would do things. And I think he owned like a tire shop or they fixed vehicles and stuff. But the boss would be there. He'd be there pulling off tires. He'd be at the register. He'd be in the back fixing inventory, all this stuff. Because he said, I don't have to pay myself. He's like, I'm a free worker. I have to work anyways, or I'm going to get paid anyways, but I might as well be there and see it all, progress. He goes, and also, if I do one day leave and be retired and relax and enjoy the producing of my business, he's like, I need to be able to trust the people working behind the register. How else can I trust them? But by working side by side for them. And he was able to weed out the people that were good and bad by seeing who was lazy when he was there and who was lazy when he was gone. Like, there were a few workers who only work really well when he comes in because they see him like, oh, the boss is here, I have to impress. And then there are people who stay working no matter what. And he watched for them. So he would come in and he'd work a shift and everything, and then he'd be off a few days. He'd give himself a part-time job as far as hours. And he would do that to see which crew members would work even when he wasn't there. And he found crew members who would do that. And then at one point, when this business took off and he got a lot of word out and he no longer needed to work at all and he could pay to afford 2 more workers without sweating bullets at all, he went home, retired, has his phone on all the time so they can call him. He doesn't have to watch them. He sees the cameras at home, sees that his business is working just fine, another big deal. But that's the benefit of it. He put his work in. He didn't quit for almost a year or 2 into his business. And even then, it was really hard to stop working because he was worried about what would happen because their business mattered, right? And it honestly doesn't seem like your husband or your future husband, in the situation of the fiancé, is taking the situation very seriously. But Maybe he's just overestimated, play devil's advocate here. And maybe he overestimated. Maybe it's a lot harder than he thought it was to start out. Don't give him more money. Be like, hey, sweetie, you're going to have to get a part-time job. You're going to have to take it yourself and fund your own stuff, but I'm not giving you any more money. And if you don't want to kick him out and you don't want to do that, then tell him, I'm not going to pay for more money into your business, but you're going to have to trying to help out somewhere else. Cooking, cleaning, doing house chores, something. If you don't mind him not working, say if you make a decent amount of money. If the money is the problem in the situation, which I think is also fair, then you need to tell him, hey, sweetie, I love you, but I can't finance your life. I can't support you. I have other mouths to feed. I have other bills, obligations, etc., etc., etc. Because then you're not playing into the emotions. You're playing into facts. Because that's the reality of it. But that's a good point. And let's see. I want to see if there's anyone else who says something a little different. I'm just curious if they have more point. Oh, someone says, yep, lived this life. Married 8 years. He only worked the first 2.5 years to 2 years. This is from Sindo Incognito. Then it was video games, baseballs, sporterific half-ass housework, depression, anger, naming, calling, screaming, stuff, smashing and throwing, manic episodes, overspending, manhole punching, sorry, I can't read. Wall punch, hole punching. He was punching holes in the wall. There we go. finally squatting in and destroying my house when I asked for a divorce. Oh, Jesus. I had to pay him to leave. Do not marry this guy and I would get out while you can. Okay, sorry I butchered Sindu's Incognito's comment, but yes, this is actually very true. I am so sorry for this person. They were saying in a nutshell where I butchered the comment about how they were married for 8 years and that he only worked about maybe a fourth of that time. Probably it's actually less, I think, than a fourth. Actually, yeah, two is a fourth of 8, fourth of their marriage, and the entire time they were throwing horrific fits, throwing video games, acting like a teenager being taken care of by mommy, and abusive. As soon as they started, for me, as soon as stuff would have gotten slammed and thrown, I would have been out. Here's why. I won't lie. I don't like it when people throw things around. I've seen a few relatives in my lifetime do that. No, they've never thrown it at us, mind you. They've never hurt us. But there's something really horrible when you see an adult in a room throwing a chair across the room, screaming, unbabbled, conversation because they're mad at their partner, right? As I said, I've never had anyone throw something at me with the intention of hurting me, but I've seen enough adults throwing furniture around as an adult or as a kid that I can't do that. I would have a panic attack. That right there would be the end, because there's something when you start throwing stuff or even punching holes into a wall. At that point, you've become uncivil, and you need to go in the other room. It's different if it's a toddler because toddlers don't understand things, and even a teenager I could forgive. But there's something horrifying about an adult, because at that point you're not acting like an adult; you're acting like a monster. So I am so sorry that your partner was so toxic and just dead weight. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people. Oh my gosh, there's someone here. I was gonna look at this. About to go down is another Redditor, and they're commenting on here too. And they said, "I second this. My first hobo ex-husband, this was." Okay. I second this. With my first hobo ex-husband, also found out years later he bragged for the duration of a relationship. Ew. Sure, let's call it that he was a kept man while driving me into the ground. They never think they have to pay their own bills again if they do this and make no effort to get back on their feet or reciprocate in a livable manner. God. See, that's horrible. That's what I'm saying. When they drag you down, it's abusive. That's not how marriage works. And you guys haven't married yet. You haven't made the vow. So it's not the same thing. But I feel like people forget that the marriage contract, or the words used in marriage, is not an excuse for abuse. All right. It is not a wording you can use where, oh, she said it, so I have the right to abuse her. financially, right? That's right of me. That's not how that works. That's not what that marriage contract is about, all right? Because the marriage contract is about, oh, if something bad happens and we lose our house to a fire, I will be there with you when we're homeless. Oh, if something happens and we have to go in debt because our insurance won't cover your cancer bills, I'll be there for you, right? It's for emergencies, not self-destructing man-child behavior or man or woman-child behavior, depending on the situation, because women can do this too, right? The marriage stuff is supposed to say, I'm here for you during unexpected hard times, not, oh, I'm just going to tolerate all of your abusive behaviors. There are so many women who have put up with, and so many men too. Men are just more quiet about it, sadly. About putting up with physical abuse because they're like, well, I made a promise till death do us part. Yet you didn't promise to be beaten to a pulp, right? You didn't promise to be loved and cherished this way, because that's not loving and cherishing your partner, right? And just because they do one thing does not make that cherishing. If you cherish something, you don't throw it against the wall, do you? If you are handed this beautiful, valuable vase that you cherish, do you throw it against the wall? Do you scream at it? No. You polish it. You make sure that it's not chipped. You put it back on the pedestal it was at, and you keep it safe. That's a normal marriage, and that is what it's supposed to be. This is just bad behavior that they're trying to start slipping. And he's slipping into it right now thinking he's got you on the hook. Or he's testing the waters to see if he can get away with it. I think you need to put your foot down. All right, we will be moving on to the next story. Give me a second while I find that link that I have. While that's going on, I'm going to play the audio for it.
My 34F boyfriend, 39M, of 2 years has an intellectual crush on his best friend's wife, 36F.
What?
My 34F boyfriend, 39M, and I have been together for 2 years, cohabitating for almost a full year. I would describe our relationship as healthy and comfortable. He is more serious and reserved, while I bring the silly goose energy to our dynamic. The balance works for us. At least, that's what I thought. Last night, I was at a bar near our home with some friends when his best friend's wife walked in unexpectedly. We haven't seen her in a while, so he decides to swing by for a bit. As we were chatting and catching up, I couldn't help but notice how twinkly his eyes were each time he looked at her. I remember that look from when we first started dating, but I now realize I haven't seen it in a while. While making dinner later, I decided to ask him if he has a bit of a crush on her. He said no, but added that it's possible he has a bit of an intellectual crush because she is so interesting and fun. The thing is, as a person with functioning eyeballs, I can see that she's also physically attractive. The conversation turns to selecting a movie to watch later. Y'all, what am I supposed to do with that information? Of all the possible answers to my question, I did not expect the one he gave. It feels like a double punch to the gut. In addition to not buying his explanation, I feel insulted by it. I know we will need to revisit this conversation soon, but I'm currently just trying to process the situation. Insights and advice would be appreciated.
Okay, first off, I'm going to say the little bit I have, and then we're going to the comment section, because here's the thing. I'm going to read some of the Reddit posts because I want some enlightenment on this idea too, because I'm conflicted, right? I don't believe in an intellectual crush. There isn't that. There is a crush, okay? Here's why. Crushes are just like encumbrant. Here's the thing. There's lots of people I have met in my life who I think are brilliant, smart, intelligent people that I don't have a crush on. All right? And there are people in the world that I've seen on TV or in real life that I find that I think are attractive, but I don't have a crush on them, right? You don't normally have a crush on someone for one trait. That's the thing about a crush, all right? A crush is more than just one thing because it's kind of the lead up to love. It's basically the foothold. Normally, most people I've seen have at least 2 or 3 reasons why they have a crush on somebody, right? That's not a bad thing. It's what it is. It's a lead up. Also, my other thing is this, right? So the whole him saying he has a crush about her because of this one thing. Again, he said she was interesting and funny, right? And he goes, oh, it's just an intellectual thing. That's not an intellectual thing. That's just a basic crush. Stop trying to flavor it as something else. It's almost like he's trying to relabel something else to try and make it seem like it's not something inappropriate. Here's the thing. Secondly, this is the biggest issue that I have. This is another man's wife, I think, right? It said that they were married. Yes, this is his best friend's wife. And this woman that you're crushing on is not available. They should immediately not be attractive in your mind. All right? And even if they are, because here's the thing, I always hate this when people are like, oh, I don't know how, I can't help that I love them. Yeah, you can. You can. You don't necessarily say, it's not that you can just stop it. It's not like an immediate patching. Some people it is. For me it is. But it really depends on the situation. Right? Stopping loving somebody when they are doing something or they're not right for you or you're in a relationship because loyalty, right? It's more like trying to tape up a hole. Eventually the water will subside, right? And you'll do it as long as you ignore it and you put it down, right? And be respectful, right? This is a man's wife, right? You are dating a girl right now. You don't need to be looking at other people, especially not someone's married partner. I don't buy it that it's not something. This is an emotional affair at the very least, or at the very least, maybe not even affair, because affair would imply that there were multiple indications, I guess. This could, maybe crush is the best way to put this, but to me, I think this is a red flag and you should bring it up to him and say, hey, that was inappropriate behavior in public, or inappropriate behavior, right? It's not that you don't want him to not say what he thinks or feels, but trying to cover it up as an intellectual crush is stupid because it's not what a crush is. A crush is liking more traits. And you did. He listed more than one trait. He found her interesting and he found her funny. And interesting can imply several things because clearly he's not interested in her for one topic because no one's interested in someone else for one thing, okay? Like, that's not how people work. Humans are way more complicated. We basically crave layers and textures in people's personalities, okay? That's the best way I can put it. And the whole, oh, well, she's just mentally interesting is stupid because people mentally are more complicated than physical. Like, it sounds horrible, but if you walk up to someone and say, man, I really like that woman's legs, it's a lot more simple than saying, oh, I really like her intellectual, because that implies a much deeper connection because the physical isn't as deep as the mental in my mind. But it's still the same thing, right? Still a crush. But I don't like that he rephrased it. But we're gonna read some of the comments in the section because I want some input because I don't know how to react to this. I don't know if I react to this very well. I don't know what you would say to him, but I do think you should say something about how this is uncomfortable or inappropriate. But also, if I was the wife in the situation, the one that's being unintentionally gawked at, I would be insulted. I'd be telling the friend, I don't want to be anywhere near this person. Because that's another thing, too. If you, and this is why I think a lot of people don't also understand. This is why I think in this situation it bothers me, right? When you are married, you are off the table. I don't like when people hit on me. When I was engaged, I had people trying to hit on me, not because I'm attractive, but because I'm nice. And they think that my personality is fun. I had a guy come up to me and say, well, if your boyfriend ever dumps you or your fiance, and I had to correct him. This is my fiance at the time. He goes, well, your fiance, if he breaks up with you, you let me know. Because I think you're very funny and very cheerful and all these things, and try to praise me at this. To me, this is a red flag, and that I hated that. I hated the whole conversation. And honestly, if you're that guy in that situation, in that situation, I thought to myself about that. And when he walked away, my coworker asked me, would you have given him a shot out of curiosity if you weren't engaged? And I said, definitely not after that comment, because if they're going to disrespect your relationship that you're currently in, they're not going to respect the relationship when they're in it with you. But I found it very disrespectful in that regard. And I think that that's the one thing I worry about with this wife, is that this wife has no idea that she's basically been insulted because he has essentially, I don't know. I guess if it's just like a crush and it's just a little fleeting thing, that'd be one thing. But if this, I would keep them away from the wife because this sounds like it could escalate quickly. But I'm going to see what the commenter says, and we're going to assume that my brain's just paranoid. So this one's from OK Gazelli. Glazy? It's either Gazelli or Glazy, but I like Gazelli. Sounds better. 5085. I think if someone in a relationship gets crushes, that's fine. It's how you handle them. But nurturing that crush by chatting with her all googly-eyed right in front of you is downright disrespectful. Okay, well, at least I'm not the only one that thought that. I do think that since it's just one conversation, it could be easy that, okay, here's the thing. This is one reason why I kind of argue this a little bit, because I like to give people a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But also, I have been known to get chatty with people, and when I'm excited to meet new people, I get excited and cheerful, and the only way I can describe it is I get like golden retriever fever in human form. And so my overly cheerfulness to see you and get to know you and all those things can be misconstrued as something not. But that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe he's got a golden retriever behavior. But since she said he's more calm-headed, I'm not as likely to believe that compared to my hyper butt, you know. But I do agree, it is disrespectful to be ogling somebody that is married while you're also in a relationship. Heck, it wouldn't even matter if she was married. It wouldn't matter if she was a single party. It's the fact that you're ogling her when you're with somebody. Is if you're not the person with you is not keeping your interest, you need to move along, you know. All right, we're going to continue on. Devoted Red said, be honest with him about how it makes you feel and tell him you need reassurance from him. Crushes are normal, but the test is in how he handles it now. Since it has been acknowledged. I would expect him to distance himself from her to protect your relationship and not to seek her out like he did when he came to the bar. Okay, so here's the thing too. I agree with Devoted Red here, but here's the problem. If you tell him, I don't like you being in a relationship with him, and he distances himself from him, if by telling him that, is he making a conscious decision by saying, oh, yeah, you're right, I should do that for safeties? Or is he just saying, oh, well, she noticed that, so I'm just going to go hit on her privately? Because some guys will take that, and some girls will take it that way. They'll take it as an excuse to be like, oh, I'll just have to be more secretive about it, you know, and hide it. It says, regardless of what, this is from Aggressive Fuel, 1974. Regardless of whether you think it's normal to have a crush on other people while in a relationship, it's definitely not normal to tell your partner about them or entertain them. There you go. That's good. I think a lot of people are saying that you need to bring up the fact that it makes you uncomfortable, and just generally speaking saying it's inappropriate to it be entertaining them. As long as you don't entertain them, that should be that kind of thing. So there's also a comic here that is that the OP commented to. And this is from Greasy Catlips. I'm horrible with names, especially usernames. They said, yeah, I agree. This is a weird label to give it. I had a male best friend for years, was also friends with my husband, and we also had all been roommates at one point. The male friend and I shared a lot of same political views and read a lot of books together. I just considered him one of my best friends, not an intellectual crush. The term crush never came to mind when thinking about our friendship. There you go. See, that's what I'm getting at exactly. I mean, many intelligent friends and with fascinating lives and compelling thoughts or ideals. I've never heard the term intellectual crush before, nor is that something I have felt for strictly platonic friends. Exactly. That's what I'm about to say. That right there sums it up real well. It is, because I've had lots of people that I really liked that were really cool, but I never had romantic feelings for them, and I never had a crush on them. But they were brilliant people, and some of them are still brilliant people, and I can't glow about them enough. But I have no love for them romantically, right? So I don't know. I don't think it's okay to have crushes in relationships so long as those crushes are out of reach or you don't entertain them, right? Saying, oh, man, so such and such actor is so hot and I have a crush on them, that's one thing. Saying, oh, man, I had a friend named Matt and I had a crush on him. Or if you have a friend in your friend group that you have a crush on, you need to distance yourself. At the very least, you don't have to just say stop, drop as a friend, but you need to keep that away from the situation, because love burns like fire and it will catch anything that has kindling. And if a crush is kindling, right, that's the whole purpose of it. And if you hold your kindling too close to another fire, you're going to light two kindlings and you'll be holding two flaming hands and be like, what am I going to do with these? I have two of them. What am I going to do? And then you end up having the problem of having to pick between one to let smother out in the sand or which one you want to work with. And sometimes the kindling you used for that crush that you then became your cheating partner or someone you decided that you would leave your partner for doesn't keep, or vice versa, that kind of thing. So the idea is behind it. You need to be careful where you put that kindling because crushes is just the beginning. And crushes can be snuffed. And as someone who's snuffed a lot of crushes with people who were close to me when I was a teenager and when I was in college, it's not hard to do. It's when you let it kindle for too long that it becomes love, that it becomes a problem. All right, we are going to move on to the next video, and I'll try to stop rambling. I've been trying to work better about not doing that. And see you in part 2.
And we can just dance the night away until we get no more shake.